In addition to Ruth Feldman's detour, I have two quotes I'd like to offer you today. The first is from the 20th century Jewish philosopher Martin Buber. He wrote, "All journeys have secret destinations of which the traveler is unaware." The second quote comes to us from Joy Harjo, Muskogee Creek Nation member, current U.S. Poet Laureate. She wrote these words in the introduction to her book, How We Became Human. "It's all sacred. Every wrong turn is, eventually, a right turn." There's a neuroscientist who has found that navigating our way without GPS increases that part of our brain that just might help offset cognitive impairments later in life. If we hold as true the fractal nature of reality, then we must begin to wonder and begin to imagine into being that our acts of navigating without maps, electronic or otherwise, that our actions of attending to so-called wrong turns could be journeys filled with Buber's secret destinations and Harjo's sacred allness. Before going much further, I have to confess, I worry about Harjo's certainty. I worry that it's misplaced, that it might be a form of spiritual bypassing. For as much as there are happy endings, there are so many that are rotten. Some get lost along the way, unintended detours riddled with ruts so deep we cannot climb our way out. Beloveds who cannot be retrieved or returned or resurrected except in the most metaphorical of ways. So I say a blessing over the memory of those gone from us, some of them stolen, some of them just gone too soon for our hearts to bear. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Jonathan Price, Heather Heyer, Elandria Williams. Alongside my worry about spiritual bypassing and my grief and rage, I hold also what? Possibility? Potential? Not for progress, we left that behind in the 20th century, but for emergence, for co-creation, for not only listening to the world we dream of, but dreaming it into being without a map to show us the way. The secular American social philosopher Rebecca Solnit and the Christian public theologian Barbara Brown Taylor each suggest that we should practice getting lost on purpose. And if not choosing to, then assenting once it happens. Taylor tells us that if we do not start now, choosing fairly low-risk ways of being lost, how will we handle it when the winds of life knock us off course? She reminds us that the skills needed for literal lostness are the ones that we need for other forms. Managing our panic, marshaling our resources, looking around to see what there is and where we are, and openness to the offerings that come from this unexpected development. Unitarian Universalism is lost. Some might call it trying to redefine ourselves, others that we are rooting our authentic selves in the 21st century It's both right and wrong what some of our Christian detractors have claimed from the start, that we are a dangerous, gigantic, God-killing wrong turn. Instead, I believe that we have taken a detour. And not just a semantic shift, a true reorientation. And some of the wisest of us, having noticed we were lost, that we are lost, instead of immediately trying to find our way back, are offering to find our way forward, maybe just our next way, and the next. Potawatomi biologist, academic, poet Robin Wall Kimmerer describes Abrahamic religions with their commandments of right and wrong as maps. What she was taught of indigenous spirituality is more like a compass, pointing in a direction, but then you have to find your way. Unitarian Universalism, even with our sixth source of spiritual teachings, of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with natural rhythms, does not resemble authentic indigenous spirituality. And still, there is something powerful within Unitarian Universalism, and it is worthwhile to respectfully borrow the metaphor. A compass, not a map. Comfort with getting lost, agreeing not to rely on GPS, which was no doubt programmed by white supremacy culture anyway. When Greg asked me to preach at his ordination, I asked him whether he had chosen a reading already, and his first answer was quickly supplanted by another email that came minutes later into my inbox. Well before we met at seminary, his first year and my last year, he had taped on a mirror in his home a poem. The poem you've heard this morning, Detour by Ruth Feldman. Ruth was my great aunt, a relative to whom I was fiercely devoted in the last decade of her life, a life filled with tragic and delicious and drama-filled detours. About whose life, and I don't think Greg knows this, I wrote my very first sermon as a layperson 16 years ago. Greg has shared with me that he experiences this poem as describing not only his life, but an essential aspect of his ministry. Not only a willingness to get lost, but an appreciation for what one finds along the way, particularly when one is willing, as Greg is, to move back in order to, and these are his words, support the development and the leadership of those traditionally marginalized and silenced who are currently transforming our UU movement with their courage, insight, and energy. What is to emerge in this world where maps don't know everything, and in fact might be leading us the wrong way? What is possible in the world of secret destinations, of sacred allness? Pleasure activist, community organizer, and all-around badass Adrienne Marie Brown suggests the following. We are creating a world we have never seen. We are whispering it to each other as we cuddle in the dark, and we are screaming it at the people who are so scared of it that they dress themselves in war regalia to turn to face us. because of our ancestors, because of us, because of the children we are raising, she continues, there will be a future without police or prison. Yes, there will be a future without rape, without harassment and constant fear and childhood sexual abuse. A future without war, hunger, violence, with abundance, where gender is a joyful spectrum. And she closes with these words, where my nephew would not be bullied for his brilliant differentness, where each of our bodies is treated like sacred ground, whether we have insurance or not. This is Greg's work, his ministry, the one he has been conducting already and the one to which we are ordaining him today. This is our work, using the compass of Unitarian Universalism to find our collective way, living a life of integrity and liberation, a life in service of a greater good, a life that if it doesn't obliterate oppressions, then it reduces their harm mightily. In announcing in a Facebook post on October 4th the death of Unitarian Universalist minister Carl Bretz, his minister and colleague, Reverend Jake Morrill, described Carl, whom I didn't know, as happily welcoming what he called revolutions among UU clergy, each generation, which he believed necessary to move the faith forward. Reminds me of Greg, welcoming and celebrating the renewing energies of revolutions, like the recent report from the Commission on Institutional Change, these revolutions that keep our living tradition alive. Generational revolutions that move our faith forward remind me of Robin Wall Kimmerer saying that the original instructions within her indigenous spirituality call for following them differently, quote, for each of us and for every era. For too damn long, Unitarian Universalist ministers, so much white. Until not that long ago, so much male. And driven by a not especially benevolent form of exceptionalism. We were told to be great leaders. In this era, Greg, with your ministry, you are a part of a movement of white and or male and or cisgender ministers who recognize that our instructions, our compass, are to follow in order to lead. Our compasses are about making space for those who are historically and currently pushed to the margins. That if we are to lead, it is to do so by showing others with similar identities and social locations how to grow resilience, how to grow holy curiosity and the capacity for celebration, particularly for those who feel as if we have taken a wrong turn. Role modeling this to congregant and colleague alike. Saying no to fragility, defensiveness, sabotage. Saying no to gaslighting and gadflying. All is not lost, friends, even for this nation, as our flirtation with authoritarianism has moved well past a one-night stand into a weaponized, self-destructive affair. All is not lost, even as the world continues its rapacious consumption and the waters are rising and the droughts are multiplying. and the fires are scorching. So while we may consent to lostness, to losing our way in order to find it, let me say with a confidence that I did not know I had inside me, we are not lost, not in that old-fashioned sense. We are, I think, on a right path, perhaps even a righteous path, sacredness all around, as every wrong turn has the potential to become right. As our journey emerges with its sacred destinations, as we cast aside maps that don't know everything. May it be so. Amen.